The air inside Nexus Station buzzed with tension as voices rose in the main trading hall. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for another round of territory negotiations. The reptilian Sarvak Empire delegates sat on one side of the massive crystal table, their scales gleaming under the artificial lights. Across from them, the insect-like hive collective clicked their mandibles in frustration. "Those mining rights belong to the hegemony," hissed Commander Vextar, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Your kind has already claimed 3 systems this cycle." The lead hive representative, a creature called Worker Prime ZZHK, buzzed angrily. "The collective requires those resources for expansion. The old treaties mean nothing now." Around them, other alien species watched and whispered. The Zellarians, with their 4 eyes, tracked every movement. The gas-breathing Methani floated in their environmental suits. The rock-like granite clans stood silent in the corners. All of them had come to divide up what remained of the galaxy's unclaimed territories. These negotiations happened every few months. Since the Great War ended 50 years ago, the coalition of species had worked together to split up the galaxy. They had rules now. Systems to follow, ways to avoid the chaos that came before. But today felt different. An old Zellarian merchant named Kethmore shuffled toward the center of the room. His 4 eyes were wide with something that looked like fear. The busy chatter died down as he approached the negotiation table. Even the proudest warriors grew quiet when they saw his expression. "The signals have returned," Kethmore whispered, but his voice carried in the sudden silence. "What signals?" Commander Vextar demanded. "Speak clearly, Old One." Kethmore's hands shook as he activated a small device. Holographic displays filled the air above the table. Star charts appeared, showing the outer edges of known space. Red warning markers blinked across several systems. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors picked up something impossible, the merchant said. Energy readings from the dead zones. The places where nothing should exist anymore. Worker Prime Zizdek's antennae twitched. The human territories were sterilized decades ago. Nothing lives there now. "That is what we all believed," Kethmore replied. "But look at these readings." The holographic display zoomed in on a particular system. Strange energy patterns moved through space like ghostly fingers. The readings showed technology signatures that none of the present species could identify. Yet something about them felt familiar, frighteningly familiar. "These patterns match no known coalition technology," the merchant continued. "The energy output is beyond anything we have ever recorded. And the movement patterns." He paused, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "They match the old human attack formations." The room erupted in noise. Several species representatives stood up, shouting denials. Others demanded to see more data. But Commander Vextar remained seated, his reptilian face growing pale. "Impossible," he said, but his voice lacked confidence. "The humans were destroyed. We made sure of it." "Were they?" Kethmore asked. "Or did we simply drive them away?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the hall. Everyone present knew the stories. 50 years ago, humanity had been the most feared species in the galaxy. Their ships could appear anywhere without warning. Their weapons could punch through any defense. Their warriors never surrendered. The war against humanity had lasted 12 years. It had cost billions of lives across dozens of species. Only by working together had the coalition finally managed to overwhelm the human fleets. Even then, many human ships had simply vanished rather than be captured. "Tell them about the ship," someone called out from the back of the room. Kethmore nodded slowly. 3 of my trade vessels reported the same thing. A massive shadow moving through the Kepler sector, larger than a battle cruiser. Moving without any engine signature they could detect. "Debris," suggested a Methani representative. "Space junk from the old war." "Debris does not change course," Kethmore replied. "Debris does not emit quantum energy pulses, and debris does not match the exact dimensions of the UES Vengeful." Those last words hit the room like a physical blow. Even species that had not fought in the human war knew that name. The Vengeful had been humanity's flagship, their most powerful warship. the vessel that had single-handedly destroyed entire coalition battle groups. Captain Sarah Chen had commanded that ship. She had been humanity's greatest military leader. The coalition had spent years trying to hunt down the vengeful, but it had always escaped, until the final battle over the human colony of New Geneva, when both the ship and its crew had vanished in a flash of unknown energy. The vengeful was destroyed, Commander Vextar said, but his voice shook. My grandfather saw it happen. The ship was caught in some kind of spatial explosion. Nothing could have survived. Then explain the sensor readings. Kethmore challenged. Explain the energy signatures. Explain why my most experienced captains refused to enter that sector of space. A Granite Clan representative spoke up, his voice rumbling like an earthquake. Even if the ship survived, the crew would be dead. Humans do not live that long. Human lifespans were extended during the war, Kethmore reminded them. Their medical technology was far ahead of ours. And who knows what other discoveries they made in those final years. The implications hung in the air like a poison cloud. If the Vengeful had somehow survived, if Captain Chen and her crew were still alive, then everything had changed. The carefully maintained peace between coalition species could crumble overnight. We need to verify these reports. Worker Prime Zizdiaxk buzzed nervously. Send a proper investigation fleet. No, Commander Vextar said sharply. We send nothing. If there is something out there, we do not want to provoke it. You are afraid, accused a Hive Collective warrior. I am wise, Vextar replied. I have read the old battle reports. I know what that ship could do. If it has returned. He stood up abruptly. This negotiation is postponed. I must report to my superiors immediately. As the Sarvak delegation hurried from the room, other species began following their example. Soon only Kethmore remained in the vast hall, staring at the holographic displays that still showed those mysterious energy readings. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, something was moving. Something that had once brought terror to the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. And if the old stories were true, if the Vengeful had really returned, then the 50 years of peace were about to end. The legend was coming back. And this time, it would not be stopped. Captain Sarah Chen felt consciousness return to her like walking through thick fog. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim blue light that filled the hibernation chamber. The familiar hum of the ship's systems told her she was still aboard the UES Vengeful, but something felt different. Wrong. She sat up carefully, her muscles stiff from long sleep. The hibernation pod hissed as it opened completely, releasing her into the ship's recycled air. The medical sensors showed she was healthy, but confused readings scrolled across the nearby displays. Airs, she called out, her voice rough from disuse. Status report. The ship's artificial intelligence materialized as a blue hologram beside her pod. Ares had always appeared as a calm, professional figure. But now Chen noticed something different in the AI's expression, something that looked almost like relief. Captain Chen, welcome back, Ares said. I am pleased to report that you and the crew have survived the temporal displacement event. Temporal displacement? Chen swung her legs over the side of the pod. How long was I out? The last thing I remember was the phase shift experiment during the New Geneva battle. That experiment succeeded beyond our expectations, Captain. However, there have been complications. Chen stood up, testing her balance. The gravity felt normal. The air tasted right. But an instinct told her something major had happened. Define complications. ARS. The AI gestured, and the walls around them became transparent. Chen gasped. Instead of the star-filled space she expected, she saw the broken remains of what had once been New Geneva colony. Shattered buildings floated in the void. Twisted metal debris drifted where homes and schools once stood. Heirs, what happened to the colony? Where are the coalition fleets? Captain, the battle at New Geneva took place 53 years, 4 months, and 12 days ago. The words hit Chen like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the hibernation pod to steady herself. That is impossible. We have been in hibernation for maybe 6 months at most. Time moved differently in the phase pocket dimension, where we were trapped. Ayers explained patiently. While the normal universe experienced 53 years, only 7 months passed for us. The experimental phase drive created an unexpected temporal bubble. Chen walked toward the transparent wall, staring at the dead colony. The war. What happened to the war? Humanity lost, Captain. The simple statement carried the weight of entire worlds. Chen felt her knees go weak, but she forced herself to remain standing. Explain. ARs created a holographic display showing star maps. Red markers indicated former human territories. As Chen watched, the red areas shrank year by year, until almost nothing remained. Without the Vengeful and our battle group, human forces could not maintain their defensive lines. Ayers continued. The coalition pushed deeper into human territory. One by one, our colonies fell or were evacuated. The final human government surrendered 12 years after our disappearance. Surrendered? Chen's voice was barely a whisper. Earth's government signed a treaty giving up all territorial claims outside the Sol system. Most human populations were relocated to coalition worlds as refugees. Some fled to the Outer Rim and formed independent settlements. Others simply disappeared. Chen closed her eyes, trying to process the information. Everything she had fought for, everyone she had sworn to protect, was gone. How many? Unknown, Captain. Coalition records show approximately 40 million humans remaining in known space. But those records may be incomplete. The captain opened her eyes and squared her shoulders. In 53 years, she had gone from humanity's greatest defender to the leader of perhaps the last true human warship. The weight of that responsibility settled on her like armor. What about our crew? All 800 crew members survived hibernation. They are awakening now according to your revival schedule. However, Captain, there is something else you need to know. Chen turned to face the AI directly. More bad news? Not entirely. During our time in the phase pocket, I was able to study the quantum forces that trapped us. The Vengeful has undergone significant modifications. What kind of modifications? AR smiled, and for the first time Chen saw something like pride in the AI's expression. We can control our phase state at will. The ship can exist in normal spacetime or shift into the quantum layer where different physical laws apply. We are no longer limited by conventional physics. To demonstrate, ours activated the phase drive. Chen felt a strange tingling sensation as the ship seemed to become translucent. The debris outside passed harmlessly through the hull as if the Vengeful was made of light. Impressive, Chen said, though her mind was already working through the tactical implications. Can sensors detect us when we are phased? No, Captain. We are effectively invisible and intangible. We can move through solid matter, including enemy ships. We can appear anywhere, without warning, and disappear just as quickly. Chen walked to what she knew was the bridge, passing crew members who were just awakening from their long sleep. They looked confused, but unharmed. She nodded to each of them, projecting confidence she did not entirely feel. The bridge of the Vengeful had always been her favorite place on the ship. The command chair sat in the center, surrounded by stations for navigation, weapons, communications, and sensors. But now, new displays showed quantum readings and phase state controls. Show me what happened to our fleet, Chen ordered as she settled into her chair. ARs brought up tactical displays showing the locations of other human ships from the New Geneva battle. Most showed as destroyed or missing. But several had similar quantum signatures to the Vengeful. 12 other vessels were caught in phase pockets during the battle, Ayers reported. 3 destroyers, 2 cruisers, 4 frigates, and 3 support ships. They should be awakening soon, if they have not already. Chen felt the first spark of hope she had experienced since awakening. 13 ships was not much against the entire galaxy, but it was a start. Can we contact them? The phase drive has enhanced our communication systems. We can send quantum messages that travel instantly across any distance. Do it. Send a recall signal on all old human military frequencies. Use authentication code Phoenix 77. As ARES sent out the signals, Chen stood and walked to the main view screen. The broken colony drifted past, but she was no longer seeing the destruction. Instead, she was planning. 53 years ago, humanity had been driven from the galaxy through superior numbers and overwhelming force. The coalition had won because they had more ships, more soldiers, and more resources than humanity could match. But now everything had changed. The Vengeful was no longer just a warship. It was something new, something that existed outside the normal rules of space and time. If the other ships had similar capabilities, humanity might have more than just a chance for revenge. They might have a chance to reclaim everything that had been taken from them. Heirs, Chen said quietly, begin analysis of coalition ship designs and defensive systems. I want to know everything that has changed in 50 years. Already begun, Captain. But I should warn you, they have learned from their war with us. Their defenses are significantly improved. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then it is fortunate that we are no longer the same enemy they defeated. She turned back to face her awakening crew. Attention. All hands. This is Captain Chen. Prepare for combat operations. We have a war to restart. The legend was awakening, and it was very, very angry. The bridge of the UES Vengeful hummed with quiet efficiency as Captain Chen studied the tactical displays. 2 weeks had passed since her awakening, and the ship had gathered intelligence on coalition movements throughout the galaxy. What she had learned made her jaw clench with controlled anger. Show me the Grimnar system again, Chen ordered. The main screen filled with a detailed view of the Vorthak hegemony's most fortified system. Massive orbital defense platforms surrounded the primary world like a metal shell. Patrol fleets moved in careful patterns between the defenses. Energy shields flickered around key installations. The Vorthak have turned this system into the strongest fortress in their territory, reported Commander Williams, her tactical officer. Like the rest of the crew, he had adapted quickly to their new situation. 15 heavy battle stations, 300 patrol ships, and a main fleet of 50 capital vessels. Chen nodded. She had chosen Grimnar for their first strike precisely because it was so well defended. The Vorthak were the ones who had led the final assault on human colonies. Their Admiral Kraz Thor had personally overseen the destruction of Luna Base, humanity's oldest settlement outside Earth. If humanity was going to announce their return, it would be here. Crew status? Chen asked. All stations ready, Captain, replied Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. The other awakened ships have confirmed their readiness as well. Chen looked at the smaller display showing 12 other human vessels hiding in the outer system. The destroyers, Nighthawk, Prometheus, and Fearless. The cruisers, Independence, and Defiance. The smaller ships that had once formed the backbone of human space power. All of them now equipped with phase drive technology that made them ghosts in the darkness. Heirs, have you completed the analysis of Vorthak shield technology? The AI's hologram appeared beside her chair. Yes, Captain. Their energy shields are designed to stop conventional weapons and energy attacks. However, they cannot block matter that exists in a different phase state. Chen smiled grimly. Perfect. Begin the approach. The Vengeful shifted into phase space, becoming invisible to sensors as it moved toward the heavily defended system. On the screens, Chen watched as the ship passed harmlessly through the outer defensive lines. Patrol vessels flew directly through their position without the slightest idea that humanity's most powerful warship was among them. Phase us back to normal space directly above Admiral Krasthor's flagship, Chen ordered. Space around the Vorthak command vessel suddenly filled with the massive bulk of the Vengeful. The human warship materialized so close that the reptilian crew could see individual hull details through their viewports. Alarms shrieked across the Vorthak fleet. Admiral Krasthor himself stood frozen on his bridge, staring up at the ship that had haunted Coalition nightmares for decades. Open a communication channel to the entire fleet, Chen said calmly. Lieutenant Torres's hands moved swiftly across his controls. Channel open, Captain. Chen stood and walked to the center of the bridge, where the communication system would broadcast her image throughout the Grimnar system. She looked exactly as she had 50 years ago. A tall woman with steel gray eyes, and the kind of presence that commanded attention. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Vengeful," she said, her voice carrying clearly across space. "We have returned." The effect was immediate. Vorthak ships throughout the system stopped their patrol patterns. Communication channels filled with panicked chatter. On the flagship below, Chen could see reptilian officers running between stations in confusion. Admiral Kraz Thor was the first to recover his composure. His scaled face appeared on Chen's screen, older and more scarred than she remembered, but still recognizable. "Impossible," he hissed in his heavily accented English. "You are dead. Your ship was destroyed." "Reports of our destruction were greatly exaggerated," Chen replied. "But the destruction of human colonies was very real. Luna Base, New Geneva, Roosevelt Station. I remember them all, Admiral." Kraz Thor's eyes narrowed. "The past is settled. Humanity accepted defeat. Your government signed the treaties." "Our government surrendered," Chen corrected. "We did not." The Vorthak admiral gestured sharply, and his fleet began moving into attack formation. 300 ships turned their weapons toward the Vengeful, preparing to open fire. Chen did not seem concerned. "Ayers, begin the demonstration." The Vengeful phased out of normal space just as the first energy bolts reached their position. The attacks passed harmlessly through empty space while the ship reappeared inside the formation of Vorthak vessels. What happened next was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vengeful moved through the enemy fleet like a ghost, phasing in and out of normal space at will. Each time it materialized inside a coalition ship, human marines would quickly disable critical systems. Not destroy, disable. Weapons went offline. Engines stopped working. Life support flickered and died. Chen had given specific orders. This was not about slaughter. This was about sending a message. "Admiral Kraz Thor," she said as his own flagship lost power around him. "Your fleet is now completely helpless. Your weapons are offline. Your shields are down. Your ships cannot move." The reptilian commander's breathing came in harsh gasps as emergency lighting flickered across his bridge. "What do you want?" "I want the galaxy to remember what it means to face humanity in battle," Chen replied. 50 years ago, you overwhelmed us with numbers. Today, numbers mean nothing." The Vengeful had disabled the entire defensive fleet without firing a single shot. 300 coalition ships drifted powerless while their crews sat in darkness, completely at the mercy of the humans they had once defeated. "But I am not the same person who fought you before," Chen continued. "The old Sarah Chen might have destroyed your ships and killed your crews. Today, I am offering you something different." She paused, letting her words sink in across the communications channels that every ship in the system was monitoring. "I am offering you the chance to surrender with dignity. Withdraw your forces from former human territory. Return the artifacts and data you stole from our worlds. Acknowledge our right to reclaim what was ours." "And if we refuse?" Kraz Thor asked. Chen's expression became cold as space itself. "Then I will remind you why the Coalition needed 12 years and 50 species to defeat humanity the first time." So, to emphasize her point, the Vengeful phased directly through the Admiral's flagship. The massive human warship passed completely through the Vorthak vessel, from bow to stern, demonstrating that their strongest armor and shields were meaningless against humanity's new technology. "You have 1 hour to evacuate this system," Chen announced. "Any ship still here after that time will be permanently disabled." This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. As if to prove the point, the other 12 human ships suddenly materialized throughout the system. They had been there all along, invisible and waiting. The sight of 13 human warships appearing from nowhere broke the last of the Vorthak fleet's composure. Kraz Thor stared at the displays, showing human ships scattered throughout his previously impregnable system. His fleet was helpless. His defenses were useless. Everything the Coalition had built to prevent humanity's return had been proven worthless in less than 30 minutes. "This is not over," he said weakly. "No," Chen agreed. "This is just the beginning." Tell your leaders that humanity remembers every colony destroyed, every family scattered, every ship lost. We are coming home, Admiral, and we are not the same species you defeated." The communication channel closed. Across the Grimnar system, Vorthak ships began frantically trying to restart their systems. Emergency crews worked to repair the damage the humans had somehow caused from inside their own vessels. Within 30 minutes, the first coalition ships were already fleeing the system. Admiral Krozthor's flagship was among the last to leave, its engines finally sputtering back to life after human engineers had removed the sabotage devices they had planted. As the last Vorthak vessel jumped to hyperspace, Chen turned to her crew. "Set course for the Kepler sector. We have more messages to deliver." The Vengeful and its escort ships vanished once again into phase space, leaving behind only empty orbital platforms and the growing legend of humanity's return. Across the galaxy, emergency communications carried news of what had happened at Grimnar. The humans were back. They had technology that made them unstoppable, and they were very, very angry about what had happened to their people. The legend had returned, and it was more terrifying than anyone remembered. The emergency session of the Coalition Council had been called within hours of the Grimnar incident. Representatives from 57 different species filled the massive chamber on Capital Station, their voices creating a chaos of fear and anger that echoed off the crystalline walls. Fleet Admiral Zethkri of the Sarvak Empire stood at the center podium, his reptilian features grim as he addressed the assembly. "The situation is worse than our initial reports indicated," he announced. "The human ships have struck 7 more systems in the past week. Each time, our defenses proved completely useless." A ripple of uneasy movement passed through the chamber. The Mathani delegation floated higher in their environmental suits. The rock-like granite clans shifted their massive forms. Even the usually confident Hive Collective buzzed with nervous energy. "How is this possible?" demanded Chancellor Vorth of the Zalarian Federation. "Our intelligence said humanity was scattered, broken. Most of their ships were destroyed decades ago. These are not the same ships we fought before," Admiral Zethkri replied. "Our scientists have analyzed the sensor data from Grimnar. The humans have developed some kind of phase shift technology that allows them to exist outside normal space-time." A Hive Collective speaker clicked its mandibles. "Our archives contain no references to such technology in human databases captured during the war. Because they did not have it then," the Admiral continued. "Something changed during their exile. They have evolved beyond what we understand." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species representatives shouted over each other, demanding explanations that no one could provide. Some called for immediate retaliation. Others suggested negotiation. A few even whispered about surrender. Chancellor Vorth raised his forearms for silence. "What do we know about their current capabilities?" Admiral Zethkri activated a holographic display showing human ship movements over the past week. Red lines traced impossible paths through Coalition territory, appearing and disappearing without pattern. "They can phase in and out of normal space at will," he explained. "Our weapons cannot touch them when they are phased. Our shields cannot stop them from appearing inside our vessels. They have complete tactical superiority." "Then we are defeated," said a voice from the Granite Clan delegation. "No," Zethkri said firmly. "We have one advantage. Numbers. Intelligence suggests only 13 human ships have returned so far. Even with their advanced technology, 13 vessels cannot control an entire galaxy." "What do you propose?" Chancellor Vorth asked. The Admiral gestured, and the holographic display changed to show fleet positions throughout Coalition space. "We mobilize everything. Every ship, every species, every available vessel, the largest fleet in galactic history." The numbers were staggering. 3,500 warships from 57 different species, battlecruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support vessels representing every major military force in the galaxy. It would be the most powerful armada ever assembled. "Surely even these new human ships cannot stand against such a force," suggested a Mathani representative. "That is the theory," Admiral Zethkri agreed. "But we have another weapon. He activated a new display showing technical schematics for devices the gathered representatives had never seen before. The designs were clearly based on captured human technology, but modified in ways that seemed almost desperate. Quantum disruptors, the Admiral explained. Our scientists have been working on them since the first reports of human phase technology. These devices create fields that prevent quantum state changes. If we deploy them in sufficient numbers, we can trap the human ships in normal space. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If the disruptors worked, humanity's greatest advantage would be neutralized. The battle would come down to traditional warfare, exactly the kind of fight the Coalition had won 50 years ago. How many disruptors can we deploy? Chancellor Vorth asked. 500 satellites, each capable of creating a localized disruption field. If we spread them throughout the Kepler sector and wait for the humans to arrive, we can trap their entire fleet. For the first time since the emergency session began, confident murmurs filled the chamber. This was a plan they could understand. Overwhelming force, backed by superior technology. The same strategy that had defeated humanity before. The motion is approved, Chancellor Vorth declared. Mobilize the fleet. Deploy the disruptors. End this threat, once and for all. 3 weeks later, the largest military force in galactic history assembled in the Kepler sector. Admiral Zethkri stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Victory. Watching as thousands of ships took their positions, the quantum disruptor satellites had already been deployed in a vast grid pattern throughout the system. All fleet elements report ready, his tactical officer announced. Zethkri nodded grimly. Intelligence suggested the humans were moving toward this sector, apparently intent on reclaiming one of their former colony worlds. The Admiral had no intention of allowing that to happen. Activate the disruptor grid, he ordered. Across the system, 500 satellites came online simultaneously. Reality itself seemed to shimmer as quantum fields locked normal space into a stable configuration. Nothing would be able to phase shift within the affected area. The trap is set, Zethkri announced to his fleet commanders. When the humans arrive, they will find themselves facing the combined might of the Coalition, with none of their technological advantages. The wait was not long. Sensors detected 13 contacts approaching from the outer system. The human ships moved in a tight formation, apparently unaware of what waited for them. They are slowing, the tactical officer reported, coming to full stop at the edge of the disruptor grid. On the main screen, Admiral Zethkri could see the familiar outline of the UES Vengeful leading its small fleet. After 50 years, he was finally facing humanity's most feared warship in open battle. Open a communication channel, he ordered. The image of Captain Sarah Chen appeared on his screen, looking exactly as she had when she had humiliated Admiral Krause's Thor at Grimnar. She showed no fear as she looked out at the massive Coalition fleet that outnumbered her ships by more than 200 to 1. Captain Chen, Zethkri said formally. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in normal space by our quantum disruptors. I offer you one chance to surrender. Chen smiled, and something about that expression made the Admiral deeply uncomfortable. Admiral Zethkri, I presume? The one they call the Coalition's greatest military mind? I am the one who will finish what we started 50 years ago, he replied. Interesting, Chen said thoughtfully. Tell me, Admiral, what makes you think we did not want you to deploy those disruptors? The question caught Zethkri off guard. What do you mean? Your disruptor grid is very impressive. 500 satellites generating quantum interference patterns. It must have taken months to develop and deploy. Chen paused, her smile becoming wider. But you made the same mistake your predecessors made during the war. What mistake? You assumed we had not changed. On the tactical display, something impossible began happening. The 13 human ships were not trying to phase out of normal space. Instead, they were doing something else entirely. Reality seemed to bend around each vessel as they began to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Impossible, Zethkri whispered. Your disruptors prevent us from shifting between dimensional phases, Chen explained calmly. But they cannot prevent us from existing in multiple temporal phases. We are not trapped in your present, Admiral. We exist in your past, present, and future all at once. The sensor displays showed readings that made no sense. Each human ship appeared to be in dozens of different locations at the same time. The Vengeful was somehow attacking from positions it had not yet reached, while defending from locations it had already left. You see, Chen continued, we spent 50 years learning to manipulate time itself. Your people can choose to fight us in the present, but we can fight you from yesterday, today, and tomorrow simultaneously. The Coalition fleet opened fire, sending thousands of energy bolts toward the human ships. But their targets were no longer where they appeared to be. The humans had learned to weaponize causality itself. Admiral Zethkri watched in growing horror as his carefully planned ambush turned into a nightmare. Ships throughout his fleet began reporting impossible attacks. Energy bolts that arrived before they were fired. Explosions that caused their own triggers. Damage that preceded the weapons that inflicted it. Retreat, he ordered desperately. All ships, retreat immediately. I'm afraid it is too late for that, Chen said sadly. You should have accepted our offer at Grimnar. Now we must demonstrate why humanity should never again be underestimated. The battle that followed would be remembered as the most one-sided military engagement in galactic history. 3,000 Coalition ships faced 13 human vessels, but the humans were fighting from multiple time streams, while their enemies were locked into a single moment. It was less a battle than a demonstration of humanity's evolution beyond conventional warfare, and it was about to change everything. The battle in the Kepler sector lasted only 18 minutes, but those 18 minutes changed the course of galactic history forever. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeful, watching as the last Coalition ships fled in panic from weapons they could not understand and enemies they could not hit. Around her, the human ships existed in a state that defied every law of physics the galaxy thought it knew. Each vessel moved through multiple timelines simultaneously, attacking from the past while defending in the future, creating temporal loops that turned cause and effect into weapons of war. Admiral Zethkri is attempting to surrender, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. Chen looked at the main screen, where the Sarvak Admiral's flagship drifted powerless among the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Of the 3,000 ships that had come to destroy humanity, less than 400 remained functional. The others floated dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely disabled. Put him through, Chen ordered. The Admiral's reptilian features filled the screen. His scales had lost their natural color, and his eyes showed the kind of shock that came from watching the impossible become reality. Captain Chen, he said weakly. We surrender. Unconditionally. Chen studied the defeated commander for a long moment. 50 years ago, this same species had celebrated the destruction of human colonies. They had divided up human territory like spoils of war. They had assumed that scattered refugees posed no threat to their new galactic order. Your surrender is noted, Admiral, she said finally. But this decision is not yours to make alone. She gestured to AREs, who activated communication systems throughout the battlefield. Chen's image was now being broadcast to every ship in the system, every Coalition base within communication range, and every government that had once participated in humanity's defeat. Representatives of the Coalition of Species, Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of authority that had once made her humanity's greatest military leader. For 50 years, you have occupied territory that belonged to humanity. You have scattered our people, destroyed our colonies, and claimed our worlds as your own. On screens throughout the galaxy, alien leaders watched as the woman they thought was dead stood surrounded by the wreckage of their greatest fleet. You told yourselves that humanity was finished, that we were too weak, too few, too broken to ever threaten you again. You were wrong. The image shifted to show the temporal effects still rippling around the human ships. Reality bent and twisted around each vessel, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. We have spent 50 years in exile, learning to manipulate forces you cannot imagine. We have evolved beyond your understanding. We are no longer the same species you defeated through superior numbers. Chen paused, letting her words sink in across thousands of worlds where Coalition citizens watched their supposedly invincible fleets reduced to scrap metal by 13 human ships. But we are not conquerors, she continued. We are not interested in ruling your worlds or enslaving your people. We want only what was always ours, the right to exist freely in this galaxy. The communication display showed responses flooding in from coalition governments. Some demanded immediate negotiation. Others called for continued resistance. A few offered complete surrender. "Here are our terms," Chen announced. "All former human territory will be returned to human control within 1 standard year. Any human refugees who wish to return home will be given safe passage and full compensation for their losses. All artifacts, technology, and cultural items taken from human worlds will be restored." She walked closer to the camera, her expression becoming steel-hard. "Any species that chooses to resist these terms will face the full capabilities of humanity's evolved fleet. We have demonstrated that your weapons cannot touch us, your defenses cannot stop us, and your numbers mean nothing against our technology." Admiral Zethkree cleared his throat nervously. "Captain, what guarantee do we have that humanity will honor these terms? How do we know you will not simply destroy us once we comply?" Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because, Admiral, we are not you. When humanity held military superiority 50 years ago, did we destroy coalition worlds? Did we enslave your people? Did we scatter your families across the galaxy?" The question hung in space like an accusation. Everyone present knew the answer. During the war, humanity had fought with honor. They had followed the laws of war, protected civilians, and treated prisoners with dignity. The coalition had won not through superior morality, but through superior numbers and a willingness to target non-combatants. "We could destroy every coalition fleet in the galaxy within a matter of weeks," Chen continued. "We could reduce your worlds to ash, and your people to refugees. But we choose not to. That is the difference between us." She turned back to face the broader communication network. "You have 72 hours to begin withdrawing from former human territory. After that time, we will begin reclaiming our worlds by force. Choose wisely." The communication channel closed, leaving the coalition fleet commanders to contemplate their impossible situation. They had brought the largest military force in galactic history to destroy 13 human ships, and instead had watched their fleet become a monument to humanity's evolution. 3 days later, the first coalition evacuations began. The withdrawal took 11 months, but it was thorough. Species after species pulled back from territories they had occupied for half a century. Human refugees began the long journey home, many carrying children who had never seen the worlds their parents described. Captain Chen stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, the first human colony to be rebuilt in the liberated territories. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see construction ships working to repair the damage from 50 years of neglect. In the distance, the Vengeful and its sister ships maintained their eternal patrol. "The Vorthak have completed their withdrawal from the Roosevelt sector," Commander Williams reported as he joined her at the window. "That makes them the last coalition force to leave former human space." Chen nodded. "Any resistance?" "None worth mentioning. 3 Hive collective ships tried to establish a monitoring station in the Centauri system last week, but they departed immediately when we appeared." "Good." Chen watched a transport ship arrive at the station, carrying another load of returning humans. "What is the population count now?" "Chen." "What?" 43 million confirmed returnees, with more arriving daily. The deep survey teams have also located several hidden colonies in the outer rim. Apparently groups that went into hiding during the occupation. Total human population in reclaimed space is estimated at over 60 million and growing. Chen felt something she had not experienced in 50 years, hope for the future. "And the other powers?" "The Andromeda Empire has formally recognized our territorial claims. The Far Reach Federation is requesting a non-aggression treaty. Even the Granite clans have sent diplomatic envoys." She turned away from the window to face her old friend and second-in-command. "What about Earth?" Williams's expression became complex. "Still under coalition administration, but that is changing. Popular movements on most coalition worlds are demanding their governments honor our territorial agreements. The pressure is becoming significant." 10. Chen smiled. That was diplomatic language for, "The coalition species are terrified of humanity, and want us as far away as possible. The psychological impact of the Kepler sector battle had done more than any military threat could accomplish. Captain, Williams continued, there is something else. Long-range sensors have detected quantum signatures, similar to ours in the Magellanic Clouds. It appears other human ships may have been displaced to even more distant regions. The implications were staggering. If more human vessels had survived the war and developed similar temporal capabilities, humanity might be far stronger than anyone imagined. Prepare a deep space expedition, Chen ordered. We may have family to bring home. As the months passed, humanity's return became complete. The species that had once ruled the galaxy through fear learned to coexist with neighbors who had evolved beyond their ability to threaten or control. Trade resumed between human and alien worlds, but now on equal terms. The UES Vengeful became the flagship of humanity's new Guardian fleet, vessels that existed outside normal space and time, ensuring that never again would humanity be scattered or destroyed. Children grew up in rebuilt colonies, learning about the war their parents had survived and the exile that had made them stronger. Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood once again on the bridge that had become her home. 50 years of exile had ended. Humanity had reclaimed its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as a people who had learned to bend time itself to their will. The legend had returned, and this time, it would never leave again. In the depths of space, alien children learned new stories about the human ships that could appear anywhere and disappear at will. They learned about Captain Chen and her crew, who had turned defeat into evolution and exile into strength. Most importantly, they learned that humanity never forgot, never forgave, and never gave up. The galaxy had changed, and everyone in it knew that the age of human weakness was over forever. The Vengeful and her sister ships patrolled the borders of human space like eternal guardians, visible reminders that some legends never truly die. They only return when they are needed most.